Hi, I'm James Miller, the online ministry specialist at Pine Island United Methodist Church in Pine Island, Minnesota. We're so glad you found this video. If you'd like to see them all, make sure you click subscribe so you don't miss a single one.
Hi, it's great to have you with us. We are so glad that you found this video. I'm Tony Fink, the pastor appointed to serve the Pine Island, Minnesota area for the United Methodist Church.
And I'm James Miller. I'm the online ministry specialist at Pine Island United Methodist Church.
This week, we hear about inviting people to meet Jesus. Simon Peter, who ended up being sort of the leader of the disciples. By the way, that is why the capital of the Roman Catholic Church is in Rome, but that's another story. Okay. Simon Peter was introduced to Jesus by his brother, Andrew. So the question for us is, who are the Simon Peters in our life who we should be introducing to Jesus? People who, after meeting Jesus, go on to change the world. This is something we call our worship highlights video. It's a shorter version of our worship experience here in Pine Island. If you'd like the complete worship service, it's available on our website. That's at piumc.org.
And we're really glad that you've connected with us. So if you'd like to say hi to us, we'd love to hear from you. Just click contact us at the top of that webpage. You could also just click the like button on Facebook just to let us know you're with us. Also on that website, you'll find the link to our digital campus. And also on Wednesdays, you'll find the link that'll take you right to the coffee house. We invite you to join us at 6 o'clock Central Time.
Yeah, and if you're ever in Pine Island, Minnesota, well, you can find our address. You can even find directions to our church on our website. On Sunday mornings, we have inside worship at 9 o'clock in our sanctuary. We go out to the parking lot at 10:30 for worship out there. And then between our two services, we have Sunday school for children and youth, and also coffee fellowship at 10 o'clock for everybody who's here in person.
And if you ever join us online in time for the live stream, or even catch us at the end of the hour, you can join us for a digital coffee fellowship on Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. to 10:30 Central Time. With all that said, we thank you once again for joining us with this shorter version of our worship experience.
It's our hope and it's our prayer that you will be blessed by this week's video. Thank you, Ann. One of the two disciples who heard what John said and followed Jesus was Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which is translated Christ. He led him to Jesus. Don't ever read the Bible. Okay? It'll just mess you up. Or maybe you should read the Bible, but read it regularly and completely, and you just might discover something new. So today, we hear in John's gospel about Andrew, who brings his brother. Who's his brother? Simon Peter, yep, to meet Jesus. Okay, so have you heard this story before? Yeah, we've heard it before. It comes up every 3 years. And this story has a really important point. Carl, did you hear this story before? Oh, okay. But this story from John, it has a really important point. But there's a problem here. You see, in Matthew and in Mark, when Jesus walks by and calls Andrew to be a disciple of Jesus, both Andrew and Simon are in a fishing boat together. Okay, maybe you know the quote. "Come, follow me," Jesus said, "and I'll show you how to fish for people." Does that one ring a bell to you, that story? Yeah. And then in Luke, when this call to discipleship comes, Jesus is teaching to a gathered crowd, okay, and it's just Simon who's named sitting in a boat. Andrew is not even mentioned. Maybe you remember that story too. Jesus teaches to the crowd, okay, and then when he's done, he turns to Simon and he says, "Oh, row out further into the deep water and cast out your nets." Remember? And Simon says, "We've worked hard all night, we've caught nothing. but only if you say so, we'll cast out the nets, right? And remember what happened? Remember what happened? Did they catch fish? Yeah, they caught so many fish that it split their nets. Okay? And in this story, James and John are Simon's business partners. Okay, and they help. So from that story, we have Simon and Andrew and James and John following Jesus. And again, we got the quote from that one too. Don't be afraid, Jesus says. From now on, you'll be fishing for people. Okay? We've heard those stories before, right? But in today's account by John, there are no fishing boats. Did you hear about the fishing boats when Ann read? No. And it's Andrew who followed Jesus first and then leads his brother Simon to Jesus. Now, if you've been in a Bible study with me, you'd eventually pick up that the Gospel of John doesn't always match the other three Gospels. Okay? Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they have similar perspectives. They're answering a different question, okay? In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they are called the Synoptic Gospels, okay? Synoptics, okay? They have the same vision, the same perspective. Synoptic, okay? The Gospel of John, it's in a category all its own. But does that make it less important? Let me ask that again. Does that make the Gospel of John less important? No. Does it make it wrong? Even when he gets the calendar wrong, it's not wrong. Okay? So this morning, let's focus on the Gospel of John's telling of the calling of Andrew and Simon. Okay, now everybody and their brother knows about Simon Peter, right? He's the leader of the disciples. He's first among equals. When the church was born on Pentecost, guess who was the preacher who proclaimed the message to the gathered crowds? Who was preaching on Pentecost? Peter was preaching, okay? His very name, Peter, means rock, as in, this is the rock that is the foundation of the church. Okay, in the other Gospels, he doesn't get called rock until later on when Jesus says, who am I? And Peter says, oh, you're the Christ. And Jesus says, oh, very good. You are the rock, Simon Peter, on which I will build my church. Okay? So Simon Peter is a reason that the Roman Catholic Church is based in what city? Rome, the Vatican City. That's the country. Okay? Pretty cool. In the middle of the city of Rome is a country called Vatican City. Okay? So the Roman Catholic Church is based in what city? Rome. Easy answer. Okay, Roman Catholic Church, Rome. Got it? Okay. Tradition tells us that Peter is buried under St. Peter's Basilica. Gosh, I wonder where they got that name. Okay? And St. Peter's Basilica is right there in the center of the Vatican. Why? Because Peter was the first bishop of Rome. Okay? Nowadays, we call the Bishop of Rome, here's a hard one. What do we call the Bishop of Rome? The Pope. Yeah. Really cool. Is Peter big stuff? Yeah. Matter of fact, when I was ordained, okay, I can trace the hands that were on my head to the hands that were placed on the people of the heads who put their hands on my head, to the people who put their hands on the head of the people who put their hands. See how this goes? I can trace those hands all the way back to the hands of guess who? Peter. Interesting trivia. Okay? Peter is big stuff. Everybody and their brother knows about Simon Peter. But what about Andrew, Simon's brother? What do we know about him? Hardly anything. Okay? We're not even sure where he ends up at the end of his life. There's different accounts of where he does his ministry. Matter of fact, we don't even know where all of his body parts are today. Okay? That's Andrew. But in John's telling, without Andrew, might there be a Simon Peter? Maybe not. So Andrew is important to the story. Andrew is important to the church because that's how Simon Peter got to meet Jesus. We do know this about Andrew. He first followed John the Baptist, okay? Andrew was perhaps someone who was looking for more in his faith, looking for something deeper, something more meaningful. So that's why he went out to follow John the Baptist and see what he had to say. And then when John the Baptist points out Jesus to Andrew and another one of his disciples, okay, we heard the story. The next day, John was standing again with his disciples. When he saw Jesus walking along, he said, "Look, the Lamb of God." The two disciples heard what John said, and they followed Jesus. Okay? Now, this is significant because John just said earlier, and we heard this too, John said, "Look, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. This is the one about whom I spoke when he said, 'He who comes after me is really greater than me because he existed before me.'" Now, if you know the story, that should blow your mind because John the Baptist was born before Jesus was, about 6 months. Remember the story? But he says, "He existed before me." What's he saying? There's something going on here. Okay? We hear later in today's reading, I have seen and testify that this one is God's Son. So they hear Andrew, the other disciple, they hear John talking about Jesus, and they follow him. They go to check Jesus out. And Jesus said, "What? Come and see." And what did they do? They went and saw. And perhaps in those late afternoon hours, Andrew sensed that there was something that was really and truly special about this humble rabbi. Now, from the gospel accounts, we know that Jesus is not the type of guy who ran around and proclaimed himself the Messiah. He didn't say, "Hey, I'm the Christ." That's not what Jesus is. He lets other people say it about him. Okay? But in those first hours that Andrew spent with him, Andrew had reason to believe that Jesus was the Messiah, that Jesus was the Christ. So what does he do? He went and he found his brother Simon, and he led Simon to Jesus. And again, everyone and their brother knows about Simon Peter, right? Andrew's legacy, Andrew's status was not highlighted in the spotlight like his brother Simon Peter's was. Okay, so as I looked at that, I wonder perhaps Andrew liked to work in the background. You know anybody who likes to work in the background? Anybody here like to work in the background? Yeah, our heads are going to fall off because we're nodding so hard, right? We don't like to be the chair of the committee, okay? Matter of fact, when we vote about chairs, Don, what do? We run the other way, right? We start pointing pictures for our fingers at everyone else, okay? We don't like being the chair. We'd rather be the workers. We like working in the background, okay? Guess what? It's same for me, too. My personality type is an introvert. Crazy? But still I am. No, I'm not asking if I'm crazy. I'm asking if that idea is crazy, Don. Lord help us. So I like working in the background, too. When you see me on the conference level, I'm working in the backgrounds. Okay? Yet, even though Andrew was one who liked being in the background, one who didn't like being out front like his brother Simon, he has an important role to play because why? He led his brother to Jesus. And I hope you notice something here that's important for all of us to see. Okay? Andrew did not debate or convince Simon that Jesus was the Messiah. Okay? Andrew does not grab him by the lapel and get into his face and say, "This is the guy." Okay? Andrew doesn't use apologetics to prove the divinity of Jesus. No. What did he do? He just brought his brother to meet Jesus. And the rest was up to Jesus. Jesus does all the heavy lifting. Jesus, by who he is, convinces those who are with him that he truly is the Messiah. And Jesus, through his relationship with Simon, transforms Simon. Okay? And as a result, the world was transformed. So if we think of ourselves like Andrew, more likely than Peter, but if we think of ourselves like Andrew, as disciples, as Christians, this is our job. Our job is to love Jesus. Can you love Jesus? So yes, yeah. Our job is to follow Jesus, to do what he asks us to do. Can we do that? And our job is to invite others to follow Jesus. Do we have to convince them? No. Who does the convincing? God does. Jesus does. Our job is just to love and to follow and to invite others. You know, Greg, it almost reminds me of a mission statement. Kind of goes like this: to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Have you guys ever heard that one before? Yeah, we have. This combination of the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. Oh, Andrew, Simon Peter. Do brothers always get along with brothers? Oh, why you give me a thumbs up card, then you look around to see if your brother's here? What's going on there? Oh, okay, you get along with them, they don't get along with you. That's the secret. Okay? So if you get a brother, you know that brothers don't always get along with brothers. Okay? Do sisters always get along with sisters? No. We're not the same. Think about Andrew and Simon Peter. Background guy, up front guy. I bet there was a lot of conversations growing up as teenagers, right? But yet, even so, we're not the same. We are to offer this invitation to come and meet Jesus to them, to our brothers and to our sisters. Matter of fact, to everyone we meet, even if we are not exactly the same. And friends, that is the beauty of the body of Christ. We are not all the same. Vicki, are we all the same in here? No, we are not. But that's the beauty of us who are gathered here. We are not the same. We have differing gifts. We have differing graces. God help us, we even have different opinions, folks. Okay? This last Thursday night, we had our last preparation meeting for this upcoming weekend. Okay? In February. Okay? We've been working on this weekend since before the pandemic came. Has it been a long haul? Yeah, it has been. But we've been together as a leadership team, meeting from across Minnesota and Wisconsin. And we even learned how to meet on Zoom, which I kind of like because I don't have to drive like hours to go where I'm going. Okay? But we've been together, this team. We're functioning together. We're forming together as a team. But we had a problem because one of our team members in the last couple of weeks was diagnosed with a medical condition, and he's unable to attend the retreat. So we have a new guy, Marv Seablum, who now has joined the team. Okay? He came on for the first time on Thursday night, and everyone, Marv, they were so glad to see him. Okay? Vicki, can I tell you a story? Okay, if I have to. Okay, if we have to sit through the story to get communion, we'll sit, okay? Decades ago, in a different town, there was this big, scary guy, okay? Now, I've been in Pine Island for a couple years. I still have yet to meet the guy in Pine Island who was like this guy was in that town. Big and scary, okay? This guy was usually the biggest guy in any room that I went into, okay? But here's the key. If he wasn't the biggest guy in the room, the biggest guy in the room kept this guy alone. Okay, he didn't give him any trouble. I was told by this guy's family and everybody in town who knew him to keep my distance from him. Okay? To never get him upset. And if I ever had the chance of finding myself in a conversation with him, okay, don't talk to him, stay away, but if you can't help it, if he starts talking to you, okay, never, ever, ever bring up God. Much less never, ever even just breathe the idea of Christian church to him. Okay, I was warned. He was a big, scary, and sometimes angry guy. And everybody in town knew it. So one early Friday morning, I get this phone call. Guess who's on the other line? On the other end of the line? That big guy, the big scary guy. Okay? And it's been decades, but I can still remember standing in kind of that cool, damp basement of that parsonage, talking on the phone. This was back in the days when phones were attached to walls. Anybody remember that? Okay. It was back in the day that phone I was talking to that was attached to the wall, it had a rotary dial. Okay? That takes us back. Okay? And I'm talking on the phone, early Friday morning, and this guy says he wants to talk to me. And my first thought was, oh my God, what did I do to upset this guy? And I started thinking about the prior week. What did I do? Why does he want to talk to me? And then, like to put the topping on the cake, he wanted to meet me in a deserted parking lot outside of town. Okay? You know how I'm feeling? You know how I'm feeling, Kara? Okay? We know Jolene, right? So, I go upstairs. Jolene, you'll never guess who called. Because she knew this guy. She knew his reputation. Never talked to him, but knew his reputation. And I said, he wants to meet. And we're going to meet in about an hour. And we're going to go to this parking lot outside of town. And Jolene, if I'm not back in about an hour or so after we meet, honestly, I said, call the police and tell them that I was with this guy in that parking lot so the police could find me. Okay, are you there with me? A little bit of fear? A little bit of uncertainty? I should have faith. You should have been there in that basement with me. So, I go up to that parking lot because I do have faith. Have a lot of fear too. They can exist side by side. I pull up to the parking lot. After a couple minutes, this guy pulls up in the parking lot, and he gets out of his car, and he walks over to where I'm standing next to my car. He comes up to me, more closer than I want for comfort, and he looks me in the eye, and he says, "Is it too late for me?" And so began his journey back to Jesus. And months later, I baptized this guy. Okay? And it was quite a sight because I had to stand on my tippy toes to reach the top of his head, and he still had to stoop over for me to hit it. Okay? And since then, his personal witness of how his life was changed has led countless men and women to Jesus. Oh, Vicki, did I mention that great big guy who's so scary? That's Marv Seablum. Who was it who's on the team now? Marv Seablum, who's loved by people all over the Midwest because they have brought him or their daughters or their sons to Jesus? Marv Seablum. Reason for the story is this: that early Friday morning, decades ago, I was able to be like Andrew, to someone who would go on to bring more people to Jesus than I ever could. So here's a question for you. Who in your life could you be an Andrew to? One of the two disciples who heard what John said and followed Jesus was Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter. He first found his own brother, Simon, and said to him, "We have found the Messiah." He led him to Jesus. And how do we do that? How do we have such faith? Well, let us be fully in love with God so that we will have the strength to move out of our comfort zone. Don, I'm not going to ask if I'm crazy. I'm going to ask, am I an introvert or extrovert? Oh, okay, not the crazy part. Okay, yeah. Am I an introvert or extrovert? Introvert. Okay? How can we have such faith to move us out of our comfort zones so we can share Jesus? Well, how about as the hymn says, God, stoop to my weakness, mighty as thou art, and make me love thee as I ought to love. So let's sing a song talking about how we're to love Jesus as we ought to love, and that transforming power, so we can go out and be Andrews.
Spirit of God, descend upon my heart. Wean it from earth through all its pulses move. Stoop to my weakness, mighty as thou art, and make me love thee as I ought to love. I ask no dream, no prophet ecstasies, no sudden rending of the veil of clay, no angel visitant, no opening skies, but take the dimness of my soul away. Hast thou not bid me love thee, God and King? All thine own soul, heart, and strength and mind. I see thy cross there, teach my heart to cling. Oh, let me seek thee, and oh, let me find. Teach me to feel that thou art always nigh. Teach me the struggles of the soul to bear, to check the rising doubt, the rebel side. Teach me the patience of unanswered prayer. Teach me to love thee as thine angels love. One holy passion filling all my frame. The kindling of the heaven descended down. My
Got news for you, friends. We have found the Messiah. Let us go to our brothers, sisters, and friends to share the news. The light of God's love shines in us. Let's shine God's love into all the world. Go in peace. Serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.